Hey, this is Mark, and you're welcome to AUTOSAYS. Picture this, a country where the average person makes maybe $15,000 a year, yet somehow they've created one of the most vibrant, creative, and downright wild car cultures on planet Earth. I'm talking about Brazil, and what they've done with automobiles will completely change how you think about car enthusiasm forever. Now, before we dive into this incredible story, do me a favor and smash that like button, because you're about to discover how an entire nation turned financial limitations into automotive innovation that puts some wealthy countries to shame. And hit subscribe, because we're just getting started on uncovering the world's most fascinating car cultures. So here's the thing that blows my mind. While Americans and Europeans were buying whatever came off the factory line, Brazilians were looking at those same cars and asking, but what if we made it better? And I don't mean better in the way you'd expect. In the 1970s and 80s, Brazil's economy was struggling. Inflation was absolutely insane, sometimes hitting 800% annually. Can you imagine that? Your money literally losing value while you sleep. Foreign cars? Forget about it. Import tariffs were so high that bringing in a foreign vehicle would cost you triple, sometimes quadruple the original price. The government had essentially locked the country down, forcing automakers to manufacture locally or not sell at all. But here's where it gets interesting, and I mean really interesting. Instead of giving up on their automotive dreams, Brazilians did something extraordinary. They started modifying, customizing, and completely reimagining what a car could be. Take the Volkswagen Beetle, for instance. In America, it was a quirky little economy car that hippies drove. In Germany, it was reliable transportation. But in Brazil? Oh man, in Brazil, the Beetle became a canvas for pure imagination. They didn't just paint them different colors, no. They turbocharged them, dropped aircraft engines into them, stretched them into limousines, turned them into dune buggies that could conquer beaches and deserts alike. And the best part, they did all of this with whatever materials they could find. We're talking about people welding parts together in their backyards, using motorcycle engines, creating entirely new vehicle categories that didn't exist anywhere else in the world. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Mark, that's cool and all, but how does poverty lead to innovation? Well, let me tell you something that'll change your perspective forever. See, when you have unlimited resources, you tend to follow the path already laid out for you. You buy the expensive parts, follow the manual, do what everyone else does. But when you can't afford the expensive parts, when the manual is written in a language you don't speak, when doing what everyone else does isn't even an option, that's when human creativity explodes. Brazilian car enthusiasts couldn't afford a Porsche, so they built fiberglass replicas called Pumas that looked stunning and used locally available Volkswagen engines. They couldn't import American muscle cars during the 1970s oil crisis and military dictatorship, so they convinced local manufacturers to create their own versions. Enter the Dodge Charger RT, but not the one you're thinking of. This was a Brazilian masterpiece, completely different from its American namesake, designed and built in São Paulo with styling that still turns heads today. And here's something that'll surprise you. While this was happening, Brazil's economy was going through what economists called the lost decade of the 1980s. Debt was crushing. Hyperinflation made planning impossible. The average Brazilian worker saw their purchasing power collapse. Yet somehow, some way, the car culture didn't just survive, it thrived and evolved into something more creative, more passionate, more authentic than almost anywhere else on Earth. But wait, because there's a darker side to this story that nobody talks about. You see, the same financial desperation that sparked creativity also created danger. Without money for proper safety equipment, without resources for professional training, without access to quality parts, people were modifying cars in ways that were, let's be honest, pretty sketchy. Brakes that barely worked, suspensions held together with hope and wire, engines pushed far beyond their design limits. The streets became testing grounds, and not everyone made it home. The government wasn't helping either, by the way. Corruption was rampant, safety regulations were either non-existent or completely ignored, and the police had bigger problems to deal with than whether someone's homemade turbo setup was street legal. This created an underground culture, And I mean truly underground, where car meets happened in secret, where racers would take over highways at 3 in the morning, where the line between innovation and insanity got really, really blurry. Ever heard of Rolzinho? It's a Brazilian phenomenon where thousands of young people would suddenly swarm shopping malls or public spaces. And yeah, modified cars were always part of the scene. Authorities hated it. Mainstream society feared it. But for young Brazilians with no money and no prospects, their cars represented freedom, identity, rebellion. Now here's where the story takes an incredible turn. Fast forward to the 2000s and Brazil's economy started recovering. Suddenly there was money flowing. Foreign companies were investing. The middle class was growing. People could finally afford to import parts, buy new cars, access the global automotive market. You'd think this would kill the creative culture, right? That Brazilians would just start buying BMWs and Audis like everyone else? Wrong. Dead wrong. Instead, something magical happened. Brazilian car culture evolved again, but this time it merged imagination with resources. They started creating show cars that competed internationally and won. They developed their own racing series that showcased uniquely Brazilian styles. They pioneered ethanol fuel technology that made them world leaders in alternative energy vehicles. Did you know that? While Americans were still debating ethanol in the 2000s, Brazil had already converted most of their fleet, because back in the 70s, during the oil crisis, they had no choice but to innovate. The pro-alcohol program, launched in 1975, was born from desperation, but became a triumph of engineering and national will. Today, over 80% of cars sold in Brazil are flex fuel, running on any combination of gasoline and ethanol. They didn't wait for the perfect solution, they built one from scratch with limited resources because they had to. That's the Brazilian way. And you want to know the most important lesson here? It's not about the money. It never was. American car culture has billions of dollars behind it. Jay Leno has a garage worth probably $50 million. Barrett and Jackson auctions sell single cars for millions. Yet, ask yourself this. When was the last time American car culture produced something truly original? Something that made you say, I've never seen anything like that before? We restore, we preserve, we maintain. And that's beautiful, don't get me wrong. But creation, raw, unbridled, I don't care if it's impossible creation, that requires something money can't buy. It requires necessity, hunger, the absolute refusal to accept that your dreams are limited by your bank account. Brazilian car builders look at a rusty old Chevrolet Opala, a car that stopped production in 1992, and they see potential. They see a platform for a 500 horsepower street monster. They see a classic that can be resto-modded with modern tech. They see art. Meanwhile, that same car in America would probably end up in a junkyard, crushed, forgotten. Here's another mind-blowing fact. Brazil has the world's largest community of homemade kit cars and replicas. Companies like Bugre, Adamo, Miura, and dozens of others produce fiberglass bodies that transform humble Volkswagen platforms into exotic-looking sports cars. Are they as refined as a Ferrari? Of course not. But a young mechanic making minimum wage can actually build one in his garage over a couple years, and when he's done, he's got something that makes people stop and stare. That's not just car culture, that's dreams made tangible. That's imagination defeating economics. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Mark, isn't this just celebrating poverty? Shouldn't we want people to have enough money to buy real sports cars? And look, yes, absolutely. Everyone deserves economic opportunity and financial security. But here's the nuance that matters. Brazilian car culture isn't great because of poverty, it's great because Brazilians refused to let poverty define what was possible. They rejected the idea that car enthusiasm is only for the wealthy. They democratized automotive passion in a way that's honestly beautiful, and that's something we've lost in wealthier countries. We've made cars about status, about brand names, about how much you spent. Brazilian car culture is about what you created, what you imagined, what you made real with your own two hands even when everyone said it was impossible. So what can we learn from this? What can American car enthusiasts, sitting in climate-controlled garages with every tool imaginable, take away from Brazilians who built masterpieces with arc welders and determination? Maybe it's time we stopped waiting for the perfect parts, the perfect budget, the perfect moment. Maybe it's time we remembered that cars are supposed to be fun, creative, personal expressions of who we are. The Brazilian approach isn't perfect, and I'm not saying we should ignore safety or quality, but their spirit, their absolute refusal to let limitations stop them, that's something special. That's something worth celebrating. And as Brazil continues to grow economically, as their car culture matures and professionalizes, I hope they never lose that essential spark of wild creativity that made them special in the first place. Because in a world where cars are becoming appliances, where everything is computer-controlled and homogenized, we need that Brazilian reminder that automobiles can still be art, rebellion, and dreams on wheels. That's the real story here, folks. Brazil didn't build a car culture around money. They built it around something far more powerful, the human refusal to accept limits. And that's a lesson worth remembering, whether you're in São Paulo or Seattle. Thanks for watching AUTOSAYS, and remember, your imagination is always more valuable than your bank account.